And they were investors in actually a New York success called Dakota. I don't know if you're familiar with Dakota. So it's basically a couple of the angel investors in my company have said, okay, you're graduating from business school, what are you going to do next? Why don't you either start a company or go to one of our portfolio companies, so why don't you just kind of hang out with us for a little while? So fast forward 3 years later, and next thing I know, I liked being on this side of the table. I realized that I just liked the process of starting companies over and over, and I just wanted to be involved with that as frequently as possible. So next thing I knew, I got recruited to Venrock. I spent 3 years as an investor at Venrock up in Boston, and have a lot of colleagues here in New York as well. But I wanted to be, again, at the start of something. And so my now two partners here at NextView kind of dragged me into starting NextView with them. We kind of joke. And so we bootstrapped a venture capital firm. And I have a couple of mentors along the way, and he's one of them, Rich Levendot. He kind of says, if you want to get into venture capital, you can do it. You just start investing your money, right? And people kind of half-heartedly joke about that, but actually that's what my partners and I did. So we put aside about some of our own capital, and we invested in 10 companies. And after that, we then went to external investors, now that we were comfortable being partners together and investing together, and we treated it very much like an institutional process. We wrote investment memos, even though it was just the three of us making decisions together. And then had that body of work, and then went to external third-party LPs and raised our first fund in 2011, which was a $21 million fund. We raised our second fund, it's a $40 million fund, closed that last year in 2014. And our investors in our fund look and feel like a lot of other venture capital firms. We have a university endowment, we have a pension fund, we have a life insurance company as investors. It's kind of boring. But when we set out and started NextView in 2010, we wanted to start a seed fund that wasn't a seed fund that was just a starter fund or raise a Series A fund, Series A focused fund, and a bigger fund later on. We truly wanted to become seed stage specialists, and back to my own personal story, I wanted to be involved with the start of a company's over and over again, and to be a seed stage investor, that's basically what we've been doing over the last 5 years. So if you fast forward, now here we are at the end of 2015. My partners and I we've invested in 48 companies along the way over the last 5 years. Probably about half B2B, half consumer, so we're deliberately half and half. Probably about half Boston-based companies. All three of us are based in Boston. Probably about a third of our portfolio companies are based here in New York. All three of myself and my two partners we're all here in New York this week. We just hired a principal, Tim Devane, who is here and based in New York. And we really consider ourselves East Coast focused investors. So we're focused on investing in 80% between Boston and New York. We've been investors in one ERA company, Triple Lift, we were in their seed round. They've since gone on to raise the Series A, and now they just raised a nice big, fat and juicy Series B. And then we've been involved with a couple New York success stories recently. We were investors in a company called Sunrise, which actually was acquired by Microsoft in February. It was a $100 million acquisition. We were seed investors in that company. And we were also investors in a company called Tap Commerce, which was a mobile retargeting company. They got bought by Twitter last July, so July 2014, also $100 million. So we've been involved with two $100 million plus exits here in New York over the last 18 months. And I think maybe I'd say probably, even on a recent note here in 2015, I bet half of our investments have been New York based. So as I mentioned at the beginning, right, so we are high conviction, hands-on seed investors. So what does that mean? It starts at the very beginning, which is we have a bias towards either leading or co-leading rounds and helping catalyze seed rounds come together. And so I think there's a lot of investors out there, especially at the seed stage, who will be in for all the way from 25K to 100K to a couple 100K, but their message is often, it's great, when you have a lead, call me and then I'll write the check, but you need someone to get in front of the parade, right? We're willing to get in front of that parade, so we have a bias towards leading the rounds. We'll initially typically write a check somewhere between $250,000 up to $1 million initially into seed rounds, which in total are somewhere between $1 million to $3 million total. And we'll either be half or a third of the overall round size. And as I said, we're willing to look entrepreneurs in the eye and say, I believe in what you're doing. I'm willing to get in front of the parade and help catalyze the rest of the round come together. We'll issue a term sheet. And we have a bias towards either taking, then after once the round has been complete, we really take an active role with our company. So we prefer to have a board seat or take an active board observer role and work together with the entrepreneurs in our portfolio to figure out, okay, what are the milestones which need to be accomplished during the next 12, 18, 24 months, and figure out how do we work together towards those. And then the second thing we do is we work really close with entrepreneurs in our portfolio then to help them think about their subsequent fundraising process. How can then you optimize your Series A fundraising process? And that's all the way from, we often do in-person pitch sessions. We have we call it a super secret Series A CRM where we have relationships with all the Series A investors, and we try to figure out who within our seed portfolio, when they're ready to go raise that Series A, who should we be introducing that's going to be a good fit. And so all along that way during that seed stage, that's where we consider ourselves, that's our specialty. And now that we've invested in 48 companies over the last 5 years, we see the same issues coming up over and over again, that regardless of sector or what the approach is, whether it's B2B or consumer, there are just issues that come up that are specific to that seed stage. A lot of times those issues are just very tactical, right? Like, should I be getting a bookkeeper or should I be getting a CFO for hire? Should I be getting a controller? What's in between? To, even on the recruiting front, I think some of the larger VC firms, they'll tout, okay, we've got an in-house recruiter, blah, 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 that'll help place your SVP of sales when you're a Series B company. We think about the seed stage and what are the hires that you need to make at the seed stage, and often those are tactical doers, right? And so we've noticed that within our own portfolio and have a couple initiatives around that. So when entrepreneurs become a new portfolio company within the Nextby family, you get couple-hour sessions with a talent specialist, which helps, that knows about hiring at the seed stage and what challenges and issues you're going to face in those. And then we get very tactical too, both here in New York as well as in Boston. We use our network and we use our network's network to try to aggregate people that are looking for jobs that are not the SVP of sales, but I need a director of UI, I need a tactical social media marketer. And we aggregate those. Some we anonymize depending on where they are in their job search process. And we literally have an email that goes out to our founder CEOs every Thursday, like, here are the people that are coming on the market that have been vetted, not necessarily by us, but by someone else in our extended network. Trying to think what else I could tell you about Nextby. Talk about geography, sector. Yeah. The latest investment which I made is a Boston-based company. It's called Renoviso. It is a company that allows consumers, to actually book through an e-commerce experience small home renovation projects. So their initial foray is in replacing windows in your house. Soon they will be doing doors, which is kind of a minor extension, but then also that flooring. And so, for example, windows, you literally go online and say, okay, I've got 10 windows in the front of my house. I want to have them replaced. Do I want to have them with Andersen or Pella or Renoviso's white label product? They're this size by this size. And you kind of go through kind of a whole wizard and checkout process. And then somebody comes to your door when you have a appointment scheduled, and they are a Renoviso branded person that will go through the execution of working with you to get that project completed. I don't know if anyone here has ever replaced windows in their house. The alternative is terrible, right? Which is, I actually went through it myself, so I know this firsthand. You go to Angie's List, you call 4 to 5 different people that are recommended. Maybe 3 or 4 of them call you back, then 3 of them actually show up, and then you get 3 different price quotes, and you take the most expensive one or the cheapest one, and there's not a lot of transparency in the process. And so we think that small home renovation projects can be Uberized, if there's a lack of a better word, and with a simple kind of front interface, and as well as just a high level of service that you'd expect when of any kind of e-commerce experience. We're in another company, actually that's a Boston-based, or excuse me, that's a New York-based company that rhymes very much with it. So there's a company called Paint Zen here in New York, and think of it almost as the Uber of painting. I've got a 12 by 20 room that's in my apartment, and I want to have it painted on Thursday at 4 o'clock, and I want it to be green. Book it online, Thursday at 4 o'clock, painters show up, and we're going to do it. It's going to be at a price that's fair. It's not going to be the cheapest price, but it's going to be a price that's fair. They started here in New York, have just taken off, and launched in San Francisco last year, and then in the last 3 weeks have launched in Boston and Chicago. So with Renoviso, that was one where I got to know the entrepreneur actually over about a little over a year. I met him at an entrepreneur networking event, actually not too dissimilar from this one, and he was just kind of socializing the idea. Wasn't a pitch yet. He had been working at TripAdvisor for the last 3 or 4 years, and still is a consumer acquisition specialist. And so, one of the things I'm sure will be a theme in some of our Q&A here and pitches later. But I always ask, in any business, what is the unfair distribution advantage? And in this case, part of the unfair distribution advantage was the entrepreneurs, one of the 2 entrepreneurs, their core skill set was they're just a tactical internet marketer. And the good news about home renovation projects, even windows alone, the average price point is somewhere between $4,000 and $10,000. So these are high value transactions which have a lot of margin in them, and so you're able to experiment a lot with paying for customers because there's just absolute dollars amount. I think the vision of this company is to go beyond windows. It's kind of a boring little business, but after that, if you can get a consumer to think of you not just on their one home renovation project, but actually get it so that you can have consumers think of it as a lifetime value. And I'm going to keep going back to Renoviso after I do flooring and retiling bathrooms and things like that. I think that's where the kind of the holy grail is for that company. I met them at this entrepreneur event, and then just kept in touch with them over a year. The two founders had bootstrapped their way to, call it 24 orders. So, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that was more than them. You could tell that was more than just them calling their friends to get it done. They had acquired the majority of those through completely online acquisition tactics. About half of those were Facebook, roughly. And literally somebody clicked on a Facebook ad and said, "You want your windows replaced?" Question mark kind of thing, and went through the entire process. And so they had, demonstrated some real interesting proof points that, the good news about 24 sales going through that whole process, when you have an average of $4,000 or $5,000 contract value, I mean, it generated $100,000 revenue that they bootstrapped. So it was really impressive, and that was in about a 3-month time frame from call it not just ideation, but like really both of them on it full time. So they accomplished quite a bit on a low kind of paid in capital. I think a couple tens of thousands of dollars. Yeah. So that's kind of the overview, right? Q&A and all. Yeah.
I'm just curious, since you were talking about it in referencing Uber.
Yeah.
So that's like the consumer side of it. Do they have like an authorized service provider program, or what is when they develop sort of their technology for their actual consumers?
Yep. So both Renoviso and PaintSet, it's very similar. There's a lot of similarities and a lot of similarities, and a lot of differences. Both have suppliers that are contractors. And in contrast to Uber, these are not individuals. They're not individual hires, but they actually are experienced, installers and or painters. Especially for Windows, it's a higher skill. You have to go people know. Painting, you can hire people and they can kind of paint for the most part. Whereas you can keep a paint. You can give me a paintbrush, I can do it. You can't just give me a window and there's a new window in our house. So they maintain a supply side. Both of them are doing a lot of things that is technology enabling with mobile phones, so that around scheduling, prompting the installers, like, hey, you've got an appointment coming, make sure you're there, all the way to, you're halfway through the appointment, have you asked these 3 questions, right? There's a lot of this on the Renoviso. There's still a discovery process in the first initial home visit, whereas with PaintZen, I mean, it's as simple as I said. You show up at 4 o'clock with green paint and you paint it. The good thing about painting is that unlike some other sharing economy companies where, take example like cleaning. In contrast to cleaning, because the founders actually were involved with a company called Line Clean, which is also a New York-based company that does kind of Uber cleaning. They found that cleaning, you would think it's either clean or it's not, but actually consumers end up feeling that my house was kind of cleaned last time or not, and so there's a lot of gradations of how clean is cleaning and whether you did a great job or not. They found that one of the benefits of painting is like either it's painted well. If it's not, you can just go in and fix it, and they have to do that in a small percentage of cases. But for the most part, it's either painted well or it's not. As opposed to there's a lot of, no pun intended, there's a lot of dirtiness to cleaning because people have lots of different perceptions of what's a clean apartment. Yeah, right there.
There's you and 2 partners and 40 investments. How can you look after these things?
Yeah, so we're seed safe specialists. We stay on the board through the Series A. We tend to roll off either after the Series A or definitely by the time the Series B rolls around. It just depends on how many other venture capitalists are in the room. I think 1 venture capitalist room is helpful. 2 is marginally helpful. 3 is destroying value, right? So so after at some part along the way, we don't have the formal board involvement. But what we've found now that we're 5 years in is that you develop a special relationship with entrepreneurs when you're a seed stage investor because you believed in them when they either had nothing or very little. And so we earn the trust, we earn the ability to be a trusted advisor so that when they're facing kind of strategic moments in their company beyond the Series A, we often are become the first phone call anyway. So I can think of, we're investors in a company called ThredUp, which is an online consignment store. We do women's and children's clothing. They, West Coast-based company. They started in Boston, 3 HBS grads, and then they moved to the West Coast. When James, the CEO, got his Series C term sheet, I was the first phone call he made because he knew I had the investor lens, and so he knew my biases, but he knew that he could trust me with counsel, and so I don't think it does as much good for me to be on an audit committee of a Series C company. That's not where my specialty is, but it's at that seed stage and then beyond. And so at any one time, I'm either on the board or proactively involved with somewhere between 4 to 7 companies, which is not dissimilar to kind of a classic Series A investor. But just that those 4 to 7 companies rotate a lot faster, that we come off the board after 2 years, 1 to 2 years, as opposed to after the companies go through a whole kind of 7-year life cycle. Where each of us is only making 2 to 4 new investments this year. Right there in the red.
I'm just wondering how much equity you look for when you get involved.
We try to find, I'm going to dodge that question and say, we try to find a fair price with entrepreneurs we work with. I think, as opposed to a single transaction and parties go away from it, this is the beginning of a multi-year partnership. And so if either the investor side or if the entrepreneurs feel like they didn't get a good deal out of it, then that's just not a good beginning of a longer relationship. The right price is when both parties feel like, I wish I had a little more, but I really want to work with this person. And that's what we find, and that changes depending on where. So anyway, in the red line, yeah. Yes. So there's a couple. Yeah, so a couple questions there. So yes, maybe I should have said at the beginning, we're investors in companies that are internet enabled. That's kind of the broadest way we think about it. It's not a real word, but if it feels internet-y, we'll invest in it. If it doesn't feel internet-y, we won't. So that means we're not doing clean tech. We're not doing life sciences. Probably, as I said, probably about half our investments are consumer web and mobile. The other half are B2B. The B2B tends to be either the application layer, SaaS applications, or one layer beneath that. What are the technology-enabled services which help facilitate those properties? So ad tech, analytics. If it's further down the stack, it tends to be less capital efficient at the seed stage, and then frankly, it's a little bit outside of our purview. We're probably not going to be the investors going to invest in the next great database company. It's just not in our core. There's some other part of that question. So I guess I don't follow what you mean by that. Oh, in e-commerce? I think on the e-commerce side, we invest in a number of e-commerce companies. We're trying to either look for a different model, sort of a different model or approach, And then we also have another thesis around what we call high consideration goods in e-commerce. And by that I mean products which you would buy that you wouldn't have bought online in the year 2000 because they're either too high of a price point or there's just more consideration involved. So usually those kind of go hand in hand. So Random Home Renovation Project is a good one, right? We're in a company that's a New York-based company called Mojo Motors, just helping people buy used cars online. I mean, there's a lot of consideration in buying a used car, right? But we're also investors in a company called Peach, which is a female, women's-based clothing that's intimates and lingerie. And part of their model is they have in-home parties for the initial first sale that allows people to get comfortable with the product, and then a lot of the follow-on activity and purchasing is through online e-commerce. And so we have this idea around how with e-commerce do you create a situation that as people are more and more familiar with buying things on the internet, as this trend of buying things more on the internet occurs, how can you just twist the model a little bit so that you enable that commerce to happen? Let's go right here. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sort of a longer question. What's the best way to contact you with your startup? And how many companies a year do you look at? I mean, you might get 100 a day, people sending an email or something. But
Yeah.
after you screen something, and you spoke to them or did something, how many do you actively look at? You make mathematics, you make about 8, 9, 10 investments a year.
That's right.
How many are sort of prospects you get with them?
Yeah. So the firm as a whole makes, I'll answer the numbers part first and then answer about introductions. And I think this is not just for next year, but I think broader, right? So we're investing, we're making somewhere between 8 and 12 new investments a year from the firm, or 2 to 4 new investments per partner. We probably, we don't, I don't know, it's in the hundreds that we get some type of touch point of introduction or cold email or something. It's even more than that. It's hundreds, or if not more than 1,000 each year. I actually think there's a spectrum, and I'll debunk, but I'll try to debunk what I think is conventional wisdom, right? So there's a spectrum. I think the conventional wisdom is you want a warm intro, right? So everyone's like, oh, you need to get a warm intro to a venture capitalist. I don't know what a warm intro is, and part of it is I don't know if that does you much good. I think there's ones that over here, hot's the right word, but something that's a very extremely warm intro is, I don't say it's a no-brainer, but where we really, really pay attention is if someone who we trust says, you really have to spend time here and pay attention. And so that's going to cut through the noise right away. So not everyone can get there, right? What I find that entrepreneurs end up doing is they work, often you get this notion of, okay, you got a warm intro, but I actually think the effort it takes to try to find something that's warm is you better be expected just to get any intro to someone that you know. I think an intro helps. And it doesn't have to be super warm. It just has to be enough that it's not just this random email that came in from anywhere. I think what I've found is people worry too much about trying to say, okay, does this person know this person well enough, and blah, blah, blah. And unless it's going to reach this point where it's somebody that is really trusted, I think just a mild, you don't want it ice cold, but just an intro from someone that knows me is going to just rise above the gazillion other just random emails. I think the other one is we do pay attention to cold emails when they're crafted well, in the sense that you can tell it's not a form. You know, you can see it's not a cut and paste from in different fonts and colors, right? But beyond that, that there's a reason in the email explain why you're approaching us, right? It's either about our seed stage focus, or that it's about, you know, I've noticed you're investors in a number of SaaS companies, and this is a logical extension of what seems to be a theme which is going here. And so it's not a lot, but we have invested in one company out of the 48 where it was literally just a cold email from someone who read our blog. That's, you know, 2%. I mean, so it's like we'll pay attention there. But I think otherwise, yes, the mild email I think is better served than trying to work too hard to get a warm intro. One in the back there.
Yeah, thanks. How far do you want to see a startup go before you start talking to them for investment? Do you have a prototype? Do you have an idea?
Yeah.
Do
So
you just like it how they look?
yeah. So the way we think about our investment process is we look at three things, and we look at these three things in this order. We look at team, then market, and then product. And the answer to your question depends on all three of those things, and how well we as investors can assess all three of those things, right? And so we have invested in a number of companies actually, which were at the stage was literally the proverbial napkin sketch, right? But in those cases, it was two things happened. It was one, the teams were, and I use the word team very directly, very rare, but it's occasionally we invest in one sole founder, but it's usually a team. You know, the team was doing something that was very native to what their past experiences was. You know, I mentioned Mojo Motors earlier today. I mean, Paul Nigerian there. You know, he worked as the head of eBay Motors parts and accessory business, and then he was at another marketplace-based startup. And so if there was a guy in the world, you know, there's 10 guys in the world that are going to kind of start this kind of company, he was one of them, right? And then the second part is, you know, can we assess? Do we have the ability to assess how good of the level of the team, right? It's have we known them for a while, or do they just, you know, come in and pitch on Thursday? So then the next thing we look at is market, right? It's like, how big is the market opportunity? And again, how well can we assess that as a firm? You know, we've been investors in a number of e-commerce companies. I've been an investor in a number of ad tech companies. You know, if those are markets that we know really well, then I think we're more willing to take a bet on companies that are less far along in their company lifecycle process in spaces that we know. Candidly, we want to invest in some healthcare IT companies. We haven't to date. It's not something that we know well, and more likely than not, in the next 5 years, we will invest in a couple, but I think more likely than not, they're going to be further along in their company lifecycle process. Yeah, we'll probably pay a higher valuation because of that, but that's how it is. And I think the third thing is about product, and I think product can mean literally what is the product, but then it's also, you know, what's the incarnation of the business to date, right? And, you know, how much traction is there, quote, right? And so if we, depending on how well we weight, how well we can assess that team in that market, that then goes to how, you know, what the manifestation is today, and how we judge the overall opportunity based on the first two. So hopefully that helps, you know, address your question.
Great.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So we have 5 companies that are going to go up here and pitch.